Hey everybody, so we're live with Sunday Spirit, and I'm sorry for moving this event until today. Unfortunately, I've been experiencing some technical issues, which is why it was moved from last Sunday until today. As you can see, I am nice and comfortable in the couch, and as it is Sunday and it's very warm in Denmark, I also just allowed myself to wear some comfortable clothes, and my hair is not done. Um, but it's all good, and that's part of accepting yourself is come to terms with what you look like. Welcome to those who haven't been here before, and welcome to those who have been here before. So today I want to talk to you about feelings and thoughts, as it's stated in the event, and how are the two interlinked? How can they become a controlling element, both in terms of negative, but also how can you switch them to positive, and how does it work within your body, within your mind, and so forth. And I had this whole topic prepared for a long time. I love talking about these things. I think it's super interesting. I think people in general are super interesting. And then I decided last minute I want to lead by example, in that sense that I also still experience a lot of reactions instead of response. It's a journey. It's dynamic, and it takes time. It takes time to practice these things. If you have any questions, just comment, and I will address them. If you see the video after the live is over, you can also just text me. My messenger is attached to my page. And of course, you can also comment on the video afterwards. And if there are any topics that you would like for me to speak about, please ask, or you have questions about. I will try to incorporate them in the coming Sundays, where I will do Sunday Spirit every second Sunday. So I promised myself a long time ago, when I started this journey, that part of it should be me being accepting of who I am, and also being authentic and being vulnerable. This is not easy, because I had built up this whole armor around me. So even though I would be sad, it could come off as anger or like being irritated or frustrated. And that's another way to not coping with your feelings, but packing them away. But at some point, we need to look our fear in the eye and be the persons we are, with everything that comes with. So the topic is still the same. I just want to address it a little bit different, because I want to use an example that happened for me today. It's very recent and it's very fresh, so I think it's very usable, and hopefully people can relate. And hopefully you can be inspired by what I learned from the situation, which occurred earlier today. So something happened earlier today where I felt disappointed and sad and not being seen, and in every way I went into my wounded self, with everything that comes with, and the feeling and thoughts attached to it. So I felt abandoned, I felt hurt, I felt ashamed. And this all happened with a time frame of maybe 15 minutes in total. So I had a date with a friend of mine today, and unfortunately she had to cancel due to illness. And for me, it was of course it's okay and it's perfectly fine. People get sick, that's how it is. But I had a feeling in my body of sadness and disappointment and feeling being abandoned, which triggered some thoughts about that. So I took it very personally, and it wasn't personal, but I took it very personally. So it triggered some thoughts about, well, I'm not good enough. I don't have, my friends don't really care for me. I am alone. There were so many thoughts being triggered by just these feelings. And all that happened was that something that was arranged had to be rescheduled or canceled for today. And instead of kind of dealing with my feelings and my thoughts around it, I started doing the victim part. So I started to complain about it and being irritated about it and feeling that this was very uncomfortable for me. And I know it can sound very egoistic because this person was actually sick, but this is what I'm talking about, being vulnerable, having the courage to actually be honest and authentic about how we sometimes experience things. And because we have to remember, the way we experience it can be from our enlightened point of view, where we can stay calm, or it can be from a point of view where we go back to the wounded self and kind of have the same patterns and reactions that we used to have. So instead of quieting my mind and dealing with the whole hurt and pain from it, I started to take these things, and then I talked to another person and started to complain about it. And I felt so abandoned and left alone. But the thing is, those were my feelings to deal with and had nothing to do with the situation. So the feeling triggered some thoughts, and then the thoughts kind of spiraled into this. And the reason they start spiraling that direction is because it is back to some old wounds, and it's back to some old victim role and putting up the armor. And instead of just addressing the fact that I was that and accepting that, it became this, oh, I'm irritated and frustrated. Let me talk to another person to tell them this, so they can feel so sorry for me, or I can be seen. And after having this conversation, I realized I am reacting and not responding. And it's actually okay to be sad when something like this happens, especially if you've been looking forward to something and then suddenly the agreement changes. But letting it spiral into something that negative, where it comes to me feeling unworthy and not being good enough, is not a healthy pattern. The thing about patterns is it is a chemical reaction in our brain. So 90% of our signals goes from the body to the brain, and only 10% goes from the brain to the body. So the brain is a really powerful tool that we can use and control. But we can also fall back into those old chemical residue that we have from the past. And then the thoughts kind of know the lanes. It's like going down a slope. So you kind of slope down the same lanes that you do when the body recognizes something that isn't pleasant. Then the mind says, oh, I know this feeling. Oh, when this feeling comes, this is the slope I'm going to take. So it's kind of basically, but at the same time, if we're not aware, this can become our way of reacting to everything. And then you live in victim mode. And that is not a nice place to be. So I smile about it now because I can really in retro see what was going on, but it felt so, it felt so deep, and it just became the reality at this moment. So instead of me going back to my learnings and what I know about the brain and the body and feelings and thoughts, I went into the human reaction, and I let the old patterns kind of take over, and the old Louise kind of take over in how she would respond to something or react to something like this. So it's interesting because even though we practice and we try and learn and we can be like, now I understand, now I know what to do. Intellectually, we might understand something, but applying it, in some areas, it will be super easy. It will be super easy to control your thoughts and also what feelings you entertain and what feelings you dismiss. But in some areas, it can be something that is so deeply rooted that it takes time. It just takes time to pull up those roots. So we have to be more gentle to ourselves. And in that moment, what would have been the healthy reaction for me, or I will call it reaction, but I should have left it with just me and not started talking to another person. I should have just spoken to myself in a more kind way and doing maybe some meditation or doing some inner work to kind of take the other slope, the new slope that isn't that negative. So, and just being honest and accepting about, right now I'm sad and I feel unworthy, and be honest to myself about it. So some things, it just takes time to weed out, and that's okay too, because that's part of accepting ourselves. So even though I'm a very happy person, I'm very prosperous, I'm very loved, and I'm manifesting a lot of good things in my life, I still have stuff that I'm working on and stuff that I'm learning. And I think that's part of this whole journey, is we learn as we go, and we get to understand what works for us and what doesn't work for us, because it's not the same thing that will work for everybody. And I think the courage to be vulnerable is so important in all areas of life. If we can't be vulnerable, we can't be courageous. That's just fact. And being vulnerable is being honest, it's being authentic, and it's putting ourselves out there to share both the good and the bad and the in-betweens. So for me, that is taking up that armor and doing a talk like this, or having a conversation with a person where I can actually be honest about my feelings, instead of trying to toughen up and keep them inside and pretend like they're not there or everything is okay. I have found it difficult to be sad, to allow myself to be sad. So it becomes this thing about, I have to be happy all the time. But sadness is part of our feeling, the levels of feelings that we have, and we should accept all feelings that we have, because the moment we accept them, the moment it becomes easier to cope with those feelings and to work with those feelings. And the thing about thought and feeling is, you can have a thought, but if you don't attach a feeling to it, it doesn't really matter. It's the moment we have a thought and then attach the feeling, and then it spirals, and then you get more thoughts. Because the thing is, we can only think one thought at a time. I know we sometimes think we can millions of thoughts. You can't. It's one thought. It just goes very, very fast. So it's like pearls on a string. But if we have a thought that isn't pleasant, and we don't attach a feeling to it, it doesn't become, or it doesn't spiral out into these several thoughts of unpleasant thoughts. So one thing can be to just try to calm your mind, stop the thought, Don't attach to feeling, and try to be curious about, what am I actually thinking right now? What am I actually feeling right now? And build in your own story, because the thing is, I've said this before, you can control your mind. You decide what thoughts you want to have. And it sometimes doesn't feel like that. Today for me, it did not feel like that, but I know this for a fact. And the moment I started applying those things that I do know, the moment it changed everything for me. The thing I like about this story is that, had this been years ago, I would have kept the rest of the day in that kind of spiral, the negative spiral. But knowing what I know, I also know there's contrast to everything. So there's also a positive spiral. So how can I go from that negative spiral and actually get into a more positive spiral and build on that? So the moments that I have these difficult thoughts and feelings, and feeling like I'm being thrown back, is shorter. It becomes shorter and shorter with time. But it's because when you start getting to the root of it, it is a little bit difficult to rip this out of the ground and leave that where it's supposed to be in the past. But it takes time, and time is also practice. So instead of thinking, oh, because this happened, then something is wrong with me, what would have been beneficial was, so this happened, that's interesting, why am I reacting this way? And the thing about feeling and thoughts becomes emotions, and emotions is energy in motion. Everything is energy. Your thoughts is energy, your feelings, we are energy, everything around us is energy. And because of that, we can create our own reality. And at that moment, I created a reality that Louise is a victim, I am wounded, someone disappointed me. I could have created a different reality. I could have not given any power to that thought about this was something personal against me. I could have just been more neutral and said, well, got nothing to do with me. And then that would have been it. So we can choose how we react to our thoughts and feelings, and we can also choose what thoughts and feelings we want to give power to. I think the most important things is the willingness to learn and grow from experience like this. I think it's important we are honest to ourselves, because I could have sit here and say, I am a victim and this happened and I'm the victim and someone did something and now it's their fault, and start pointing fingers and start going back to this thing about the world is against me. But you see, the only person that's gonna hurt even further is myself. And of course it's not fair to the other person as well, but I decide what my reality should look like. I decide what thoughts I will have. I decide what feeling I want to embrace, what feelings I want to entertain or dismiss. And I decide what to do with them. So you can keep going down the same lane, or you can change lanes. And everything turned out fine. Everything just turned out fine. The minute I was capable of not attaching negative feeling to something that wasn't negative to begin with, the minute everything changed. And it's so important that we allow ourselves to make these mistakes, because in reality it's not a mistake, it's a learning point. And the reason it keeps showing itself to us is because there's still stuff to learn. And the most important thing is to observe it and accept that that was you chose to react, and you didn't do it because of any bad intentions, but that was what you chose at that moment. But you see, always you have every moment to choose differently, so you can leave that moment behind. And at first I was ashamed that I reacted the way I did, but after working with the whole incident, which was only 15 minutes, right, I realized that there's shame is not anything to do with me reacting a certain way because I have certain thoughts and feelings. Shame is not something that we should attach, because we sometimes have the reaction based upon a pattern, a chemical reaction, because the only thing you will gain from that is more pain and more shame and then guilt. So allowing and accepting whatever comes, but observing what will happen when it comes is super important. And as I also said, there's the negative and the positive spiral. So in everything in life there's contrast, right? There's both ends of the stick, and we choose what end we want to focus on. And I will say, our inner life, what we choose, is so much stronger than what we see out here. We create reality by how we think and how we feel. So of course we should choose wisely. Sometimes it can feel like it's not a choice, what we think and feel, and it can seem as if it's controlled by reality, and that can be very difficult to deal with. But at the same time, if we practice and really try and apply the knowledge that all the power is within us, we control our minds, we decide what feelings we want to which feelings we want to entertain, and we decide what reality we want to create, we become so much stronger. And keep doing that, and keep doing that, and keep trying to switching those negative spirals into positive, because as time goes, it will become more and more, that will become your new natural reaction to things instead of the old one. But as I said the last time, we are brought up in a way where people would rather think a negative thought than not have a thought. So of course this is hard. This is not how we were raised for most of us. And it will take practice, and we need to be more gentle and have the courage and be vulnerable. That is a birthright we all have. And this is where we allow ourselves to sometimes make those mistakes and then be okay with it. Because the next time we have a new choice. How would we go about it? And for me, it becomes more and more a natural way to focus on the positive. This was a decision I made for myself a long time ago, where I said, I want to be more happy. How can I become more happy? So yes, I've been studying, and I've been teaching, and I've been doing everything within this development world. But it was not until the moment I told myself, from now on I will focus on only the positive, regardless of what happens. And it had made everything so much easier, but at the same time, I also have chemical residue from something that have happened, and patterns, and this survival strategy, and it takes some time to move from one place to the other. And I'm just trying to enjoy the journey and be very honest when stuff like this happen, to where is my responsibility? Where is my responsibility in what happened and how I chose to think and feel about it? Because fact is, if even though this happened, if I had said, well, that's fine, doesn't matter, it wouldn't have been an issue at all. What makes it an issue and makes it difficult and painful is the fact that how I choose to go about it. And that accounts for all of us in all areas. So my best advice when it comes to your thoughts and feelings are, start observing them throughout the day. Start observing what's going on inside you, what are you thinking, and why are you thinking it. And journaling can be a good thing, because in that moment it can be difficult to just be the observer when you still walk around with maybe some pain and some negative thinking. But when you start to actually write it down, then it becomes very clear of what's going on inside you. So that would be a very easy and simple way to start working with it. And I think so almost a half an hour has gone by. I can't see, there shouldn't be any questions, but those can also come afterwards. If you have questions more about how the mind works with the thoughts and how are they related to our feelings in a more scientific matter, please let me know. I would love to do a talk on that subject too. It's very interesting how we as humans are built and how much we think is out of our control, when in reality everything is within our control. But it's a matter of choice, and it's a matter of belief, and it's a matter of applying what we learn, not just knowing it. And that, I think that can sometimes be a challenge, where you intellectually really fast understand a concept or exercise, but applying it is a different thing, and it just takes some time. It did for me, and I think it have done for many other people as well. But taking the first step is and taking that leap into wanting to enhance your happiness also include situations where you have to look yourself in the eye and realize that it does require work. You probably do have some patterns. You probably maybe have more negative thinking than you were realizing, but realizing it, accepting it, and by observing it and starting to work with it is definitely a huge step in the right direction. So I think if there's no questions, I will end this live, and then I will make a new event for Sunday Spirit in 2 weeks, and hopefully there will be people watching, and also hopefully people will start asking some questions. But I think that was it for now. But thank you so much for watching. Also, all of you who couldn't make it today and will watch later, thank you for watching this, and have an awesome Sunday. Bye.